The first item on the agenda is the event initial report regarding the transport accident that occurred on April 17, 2016, involving uranium concentrate near Massey, Ontario, as outlined in CMD 16M26. I understand that we have somebody from, we have a Mr. Charette from Cameco is joining us via teleconference. Let me check technology. Mr. Charette, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I understand that I turn to CNSC and understand that Mr. Moses will make the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Commission. We don't have a presentation today, but I do have a few short words to say about the accident, and the details are in the event initial report that was submitted to Commission. So as mentioned, I'm Colin Moses. I'm the Director General of Nuclear Substances Regulation. With me here today are Mr. Sylvain Fay, Director of the Transport Licensing and Strategic Support Division, as well as staff involved in the response to the event. On April 17th, 2017, the CNSC was informed of a motor vehicle accident involving a truck operated by LA Trucking Limited that was transporting uranium concentrate originating from Cameco Corporation's Blind River refinery and destined for Cameco's Port Hope conversion facility. While the trailer sustained some minor damage as a result of the accident, there was no damage to the transport packages, and therefore there was no radiological impact to members of the public or the environment as a result of the event. However, because this event did receive some media coverage and therefore had public visibility, an event initial report, CMD 16M26, was submitted to the Commission. Staff remain available should you have any further questions on this event.
Thank you. Mr. Charette, would you like to make any comments?
Hi, it's Mr. Charette here with Cameco. We also have Liam Mooney, who's joining us, and he will be making some initial comments.
Mr. Mooney, go ahead.
Via webcast. Just a few short words before turning it over for any specific questions to Mr. Charette. Our products are safely transported all over the world in compliance with regulatory requirements. The people in the environment were protected in this circumstance. There was no release of the material being transported, as indicated by CNSC staff. The experienced and qualified trucking company carried out this activity and responded appropriately to the event. And in the circumstances, the response was expedient, thorough, and coordinated. That's all we have with respect to any opening remarks with respect to this matter.
Thank you. So let's jump into question session avec M. Hervé.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Just one question. When some such accident or incident or accident occur, is there any obligation and delay to report and to contact the Commission? I mean, by the transporter or by the by Cameco in that case.
Sylvain Fay for the record. Actually, in the regulations, it's they have to report immediately any accidents that are involving vehicle, and those are specified in the transport regulations, packaging and transport of nuclear substances regulations, and the report has to be made immediately to the CNSC with when there's a prescribed list of event, and this one falls into the list.
And this has been made immediately, you mean in 1 hour or such lapse of time?
Yes, I think in this case it was about an hour after the event when the CNSC got notification of that event on the Sunday morning.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up, it says local police and first responders were called. What I'm always interested in, who made the first call? Is the driver make the call? Who makes the call?
Colin Moses for the record. Typically in any accident it would be the driver or witnesses who will call first responders, for example. In this case, the vehicle traveling in the opposite direction impacted the trailer and there were some injuries as a result of that. And so first responders were called to respond to the scene.
But are the drivers, all the drivers that are using uranium and product like that, are they trained as what needs to be done in case of an emergency?
Yeah, so as part of the regulations, they have to, each carrier has to implement some work procedures and emergency response. And in this case, like all the drivers are supposed to be trained for that, and all companies would have an emergency response appropriate for their company. It could be just calling in the dispatcher where he's going to make the call, but the driver has some responsibilities, and that's valid for all shipments. It's not just for radioactive material. That would be for any product and their general emergency response.
Ms. Velshi?
Thank you. Glad to note that Cameco did report this incident on its website. I don't have any questions on this particular incident, but maybe a general question to Cameco, because we've heard of other accidents this year. In a typical year, how many uranium transportation accidents are there?
Hi, it's Marc-Andre Charette here for the record. Their transport accidents, they might be, a typical year it might be one or two. It varies depending on the year. Some years there's none. This year there's been a couple, but they're just a few on a yearly basis. And most of them are single vehicle accident where the truck usually ends up in the ditch or the snow or something like that.
Thank you.
Do you have kind of one or two, maybe a high percentage? What's the volume? Do you have any handle on how many shipments a year do you do?
It's Marc-Andre Charette here for the record. I don't have exact numbers for volumes of shipments we do on a yearly basis. So I don't have a percentage on how much accidents versus the volume of shipments we do.
It's Liam Mooney for the record. I would just add that these incidents are very rare, and in the circumstances, yes, we've had a couple this year, but we can go, as Mr. Charette indicated, several years without an incident, and our drivers, our contractors who provide those trucking services are regularly audited for their compliance with the TDG regulation requirements as well as our own programs.
Thank you. Mr. Tolgiesi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I have just two questions. One is that you were saying that there is no life-threatening injuries reported. Were there any injuries?
Colin Moses for the record. Maybe I can leave Cameco to provide specific details, but we understand that the passenger and the driver in the incoming vehicle were injured. The extent of their injuries, we understand they weren't life-threatening, but they weren't. We weren't giving specific information on the nature of their injuries.
Marc-Andre Charette for the record. I would echo the comment. There was an ambulance that was at the scene and did treat the passengers of the other vehicle. Medical information is private and was not shared with Cameco to the extent of their injuries.
And my second is to Cameco. You do these transportations. Do you have pre-selected transporters, or you do verification or specific requirements and training when the radioactive material destinated to or from your facilities is it's done? Or you take any transporter and you don't check if it's special some knowledge or training done to transport radioactive material?
Marc-Andre Charette for the record. No, we do have a selection criteria. In this case, LA Trucking has been working with Cameco for the past 34 years or so since the Blind River Refinery has been opened. Cameco does, on a 3-year base, training exercises with our LA Trucking, and on an annual base, we do refresher training. That includes training on how to respond to emergency, how to activate the emergency response, who to call, what they need to do at the scene of an incident.
Thank you. Dr. McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presumably the driver would have had the standard drug and alcohol testing, and you would get the results and report those to staff?
The LA Trucking, it's Marc-Andre Charette for the record. LA Trucking does have a drug and alcohol policy in place. Since the driver was not at fault, there was no drug or alcohol testing done in this particular event.
Okay, any other question? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.